Oh, I didn't even see the one. I guess we're recording now.
There it is.
Hey, what's up, everyone? We are back. We are Two Poets. Welcome to the Two Poets Show, where we talk about all things creative. We write poetry. We talk about art and all kinds of cool stuff. Thank you so much for finding our little podcast. My name is Corey.
I'm Ben.
And we like to talk about all things creative. Ben, how is it going, my friend?
Bruh, it is going. I had a lot of fun this past week doing a lot of reading and a lot of writing, preparing for today's podcast. So
yeah,
I am excited to get into this. I am especially excited to hear what you wrote.
Yeah, don't be too excited.
I love like hearing other people's perspectives, and when we talk about like certain poets and reading them and then taking our own spin on how we interpret them, I'm really excited to get into that.
Yeah. So, this is the first time we're doing that too, where we are taking a poet and trying to step into their shoes and us interpret that and write something in their style. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and please criticize us, everybody, and let us know your thoughts.
Hard. Give us all the criticism.
Yeah, so if you're just tuning into this episode, last episode we talked about how we were going to draw a random name, a random poet, and then write a piece of poetry. No topic, it could be whatever we want, but we have to try to write it in the style of that poet, which means we have to get into their head, kind of do some research. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But before we get into that, anything new going on, Ben? That's what's going on in your life, bud.
Let's see, anything new? So I'm kind of in a long-term phase. There's stuff going on, but it's like stuff that has been going on for a while. So like writing and continuing to write and trying to formalize some things and, wrap up some projects and so stuff like that. So there's probably not anything that sounds new. Like, I'm still working on the book for the immersive art project. Yeah. And, working on some back-end stuff for the Two Poets project that we have going.
Yep.
And so just a lot of stuff like that. In the meantime, working on my latte art. There's going to be some events going on this summer that I'm trying to practice for. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So, yeah, that's pretty much what's been going on for a while.
Nice. So, heck yeah.
Yeah, I don't stay insanely busy like you.
Yeah.
I have a dozen things going on at once all the time.
You should try it.
Yeah, I did that for a while. So
sweet.
What's up with you, man? You guys on your house?
Yeah, so as we said last time, I think I mentioned it last episode. Yeah, we bought a house. And we are currently remodeling it. Not a huge remodel. We basically just ripped up all the floors. Grinded the concrete slab down a little bit, and now we're going to do some stained concrete and put a sealer over it and do some painting before we move in. And so tonight, after we record, I'll be heading over there to stain the concrete and get this house ready and have a new podcast set up, so I'm not here in my in-laws' house, doing our podcast. I can actually have all my gear set up and get back into doing the top shelf stuff. So,
very nice.
Other than that, we was in OKC last night. Went to a concert over there, got to see He Is Legend and hang out with some awesome bands and hear some great music, and then back into this today. So it's been a good couple days.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I was watching your stories that you guys posted on your band. That sounded like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. The mixing could have been a little bit better by the sound guy, but
man,
it's hard when you're in small venues like that.
That's a tough gig. A small venue and a hardcore band like that. That's got to be a challenge for sure.
Yeah, but it was fun regardless.
That's awesome. I'm glad you guys had a good time.
Yeah, but cool. I'm excited about sharing this poem. I spent some time watching a lot of videos of Bukowski himself reading, and reading some of his excerpts and some poems, and I feel like I kind of got into his head a little bit. I had to do a lot of heavy drinking, to get there.
You pull a few benders.
Yeah, which we'll talk more about that here in a little bit. But I don't know. I think we should just get into our poems, right? And
yeah, totally. Man.
So these are our poems written in the style of Charles Bukowski. If you've never heard of Bukowski, definitely go look him up. He wrote some amazing pieces, had a very crazy life, a lot of interesting stories from that guy. But yeah, so we are going to do this. You want me to go first? You want to go first? How do you want to do this?
You can totally go first if you want to. Mine's short.
All right, I'll get it out of the way.
Okay.
All right, so this is my poem in the style of Bukowski. So I pulled this. So the way Bukowski does a lot of things, which like I said, we'll get into a little bit too, is he also does a lot of poems about just kind of the what's in front of you style of, writing. Taking what's from your life, what's around you, and writing, making stories and poetry from that. And so I was watching this video that he did for PBS out in LA. I don't remember when it was recorded, but he went to a college, did reading, and so they had these like little bits of him like following him around LA and kind of talking to him. And he had this one interaction with this lady at a gas station. And basically, he introduced himself as a poet, and she's like, "What?"
I've seen that, yeah.
And so I was like, "Perfect! I'm gonna take that and make a poem out of that interaction." So this is called "Lady in the Gas Station."
Yes.
All right, here we go. "Lady in the Gas Station" by me as Charles Bukowski. Lady in the gas station, kindly step aside. You are between myself and where the beer resides. Lady in the gas station, so curt, asking, "Who are you?" I smiled with a reply, "Why, I'm a poet." "A what?" she said, with an empty stare, a look of total loss, like the word poet had never existed. Lady in the gas station, I said, "I am a poet." "What kind of poet?" she replied. "A modern one," I said. "I've been in this neighborhood for 10 years. "Well, I've never seen you," was the response from this lackluster, sad, dreary woman. Lady in the gas station, if you only knew how I don't give two shits about you. Let me buy my drinks and maybe take you back to my place where we can discover poetry together.
Ooh, Corey. Racy.
Lady in the gas station.
That's so funny. He would totally do that too. He would go back and write a scathing, sarcastic poem about this woman who has no clue who he is. That's great. I remember the first time I saw that video, she's like, "What are you?" And he's like, "I'm a poet." And she's like, "Well, I've never heard of you." That's awesome.
Yeah, at one point she was like, "What? A cola?" Like she didn't understand. A cola?
As he's standing there, just stuck, waiting to check out and buy his beer.
He's like, "I'm just trying to buy beer, lady."
I love that.
Yeah, because as I was reading a lot of his stuff, like I noticed there was some poems where he was just like, man mowing his lawn, and he did a lot of just like observant style, and so I was like, that's perfect. So that was my piece, my contribution.
Well done. I love it. That was so
Thanks,
fun.
man.
Cool. So I kind of went with a little more on the philosophical side of Bukowski. He did a poem called "Don't Try," and one of my favorite things is a reading by I just forgot his name. Gosh, how does that happen? How is it you're like, I know this person and blah, and then I can't think of him.
And when you need to know it is when you can't remember.
Yes, exactly. Well, it was. It'll come to me. But the reading was like so beautiful, and I watched it so many times, and it was really good. So that was kind of my inspiration for this concept. And my poem is entitled "Advice for a Dreamer."
Ooh,
it's kind of short, but here we go. Delve into your own madness. Embrace dreams with formality, business as usual. The moment you are aware they are dreams, whims of possibility, hopeful chances, then they become worthless. Find dreamers like yourself and share the likeness of prodigy, but settle for nothing less than soul-searing individuality. For dreamers die when they can't tell their own dreams apart from the rest.
Nice. Short to the point. Hit it hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of his, I think the poems of his that probably are the most moving are some of his shorter ones. He's got some that are just like a few lines, and they just leave you just kind of like, oh. Yeah. So for me, it was like I want to challenge myself and see if I could write something in that vein of like it's shorter, but it's got a little bit more to it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was
Nice.
fun.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Definitely gets you thinking about who you surround yourself with, and nah, I like that.
Yeah, thanks, man. That's awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to like I wanted to write about something that was like, don't be afraid of your ideas. Don't be afraid of
Mm-hmm.
when you have really bizarre, out there ideas. Like one of the first things we do is we get an idea for something, and we talk ourselves down, and we're like, oh, that's just kind of a pipe dream. That'll
Yeah.
never really happen. And I feel like he would tell you like, don't let go of that. Like hold on to that. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I
Nice.
thought that
I
was
like
fitting.
it. Yeah, I mean, I think we all want to have that ability to be able to write something that doesn't ramble on, gets to the point,
Yeah,
but hits you in a way where like you're not even mad that it was 4 lines, 5 lines,
yeah.
and it's like, no, that was all that needed to be said,
Hmm.
and I
Totally.
think a lot of, especially young writers, early writers, they think they have to over explain. They think they have to
Hmm.
say 30 lines to explain one concept because it's more creative, it's more out there. It's like, no, like you can simplify, it's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have
Well,
to say 30 lines to explain one thing.
the challenge too being like don't be wordy in your explanation. Like if you explain something in 30 lines, half of those words you could probably reduce and use better wording to minimalize the space, but also like punch up the meaning. And
Yeah.
I think that's been a challenge for years, is trying to figure out how do I say the most in the few amount of words as possible. That's always been
Yeah.
like that's a good challenge for any writer. Like how do you say what you really want to say, like get it on paper and then go through the process of like tearing it apart, whittling it down, use a thesaurus, like it's the best
Yeah.
tool. And it's like how do you take all of this meaning and all of this stuff, all the things you really want to say, and then turn it into like just as few words as possible. That's a really really good challenge for sure.
Yeah.
He was so good at that. He was a master at that.
Yeah, I will say that is one thing when I was reading through all his stuff and looking through everything is he didn't care to add fluff. Like he
No.
was, let's get to the point, let's say what needs to be said, and we're not going to carry on.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's the thing too. Like people who write novels and stuff, they think like there's this magic. I have to hit 500 pages, and like that's what it's
Hmm.
like. If you can tell a great story in 250 pages, fine. Like, do it. Why
Yeah.
add extra stuff to make it more fluffed up? When you can just tell an awesome story in 250 to 300 pages, or
Yeah.
less or more, and if you feel like it needs more, then great. Just make sure you're doing very good detailed storytelling, but I think instead of focusing so much on it has to be so many words, it has to be so many pages, just focus on the content, focus on making something good,
Seriously. Yeah.
you
Well,
know
and the nice thing about poetry is it's not overbearing like writing a novel. Like a
yeah.
poem, a poem just is what it is. And sometimes all you have to do is just get it on the page. If
Yep.
you just get it on the page, then you can decide, do I want to work on this? Do I want to leave it alone? Is it done? And
Hmm.
there's always going to be more work to do with your story or novel or whatever book it is you're writing or project you're working on. But that's
Yeah.
not always the case with a poem. Sometimes the poem can just be what it is, and it lives within its own little bubble of meaning. And I think that's why I like it so much, because you can just
Yeah.
whatever you're feeling in the moment, just vomit it on the page, and then if you're done with it, that's fine. If you want to come back to it 2 weeks later and reword it or tear it apart and throw it away, it just kind of lives in that no man's land of space, pretty much.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Awesome. Well, we're going to kind of get a little bit deeper into Bukowski in this episode. We figured since we are, writing in the style of Bukowski, and that was kind of who we picked for this, that it would be good to let's talk a little bit more about his life, his writing style, how he did things, and can that be applicable? Can we apply that to ourselves in our routine as creatives, as artists, or as whatever area your creativity might be? Maybe these will be some good steps for you, and we can take the good, we can take the bad, and kind of talk about it. So, I am not an expert on Charles Bukowski by any means, so I will probably say stuff that's wrong or right. Who knows? This is all just stuff based off of what I've heard, small things I've read. I don't know everything about everybody.
Yeah.
All I know is Bukowski was a man who was very tormented, had a very rough life. His father beat the crap out of him as a kid. Big alcoholic. Sometimes you have to turn to things to fill a void in your life or whatever it may be. And he took to that pretty hard, and so he's worked 30, 40 different jobs, to support his writing. And I think one of his ones he talked about a lot was being a mail carrier, how he got a lot of inspiration from just carrying the mail, and so, we're going to kind of talk about his methods, and these are from his mouth, the way he, his rules for writing, if you will, and then we'll see how we can apply that to ourselves. Any info or anything you want to add to a little bit about Bukowski before we get into his writing rules?
I always think it's interesting when you start researching famous people. There are always moments when you realize that famous people are not famous because they're amazing. Like, they didn't just get famous because they're really good at something. There's always a connection somewhere. There's always a back door, like, for them to sneak in through. There's some type of privilege that, like, if you research any movie actor, for the most part, any, like, famous person of pop culture or whatever, they didn't just get famous because of one thing. Like, there was someone there that they're related to. There's someone they know. There's something. And Bukowski is the exception or one of the exceptions, because he really was not, like, he didn't have a lot of, like, backdoor to fame relationships. He had a really abusive father. He had kind of like a physical deformity. He had he had some kind of condition where he had really bad acne that actually kind of scarred his face a little bit. And so he grew up with a lot of, like, abuse. He grew up with a lot of bullying. He had a really, like, difficult, like, upbringing because of that. But I didn't know that he actually published. I think it was a short story or something that he got published when he was like 24. And I don't even remember where I read this. But he got published in a magazine when he was like 24. And he rejected taking an agent and actually stepping into a writing career because he said, I don't feel like I've lived enough life to actually be a good writer. I don't think I could do what it is you want me to do because I haven't experienced anything yet. I thought that was really interesting. And then he, and then he went on in his life and he continued writing, but he did all these factory jobs and hard labor jobs and postal jobs and all these crazy things. And part of it is like, could your life have been better? Did you intentionally try to find the hardest, like, grimmest jobs, most depressing jobs that you could? Were you trying to, like, experience this level of difficulty so that you could go through this writing refinement process, Or was that just really, were you the type of guy that, like, doesn't take advantage of, like, moments that come in? Or, did you not feel, obviously you didn't feel you were good enough to actually do it, but it's just interesting. It really makes you think a lot about his decision making from being a young person and wanting to step out into the world. And I'm like, dude, you could get a lot of experience doing way different things. Like, you didn't have to
Yeah.
go the direction that you did. But yeah, it's really interesting. There's a lot of stuff about him that I didn't know until really researching.
Yeah, it was crazy. But like he had a way with words,
Hmm.
and it I know we had talked about this too. It's a little hard to listen to him talk when he's
Yeah,
reading his poems cuz he has no, like, he just reads. There's no
yeah.
like emphasis, creativity with his reading. It's just he just sits down. He's just reading this monotone up, like some inflections here and there, but like it's brutal.
He's very monotone. He's
Yes, that's
very
exactly it.
nasal. He's very repetitive. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, dude. But at the same time, it's just like he didn't need to. He
Yeah,
knew
his
people were there for
words.
him. He didn't care. Like, that's crazy.
Yep,
So
all he needed was his words.
yeah.
All right, so let's get into this. So Charles Bukowski's Real Writing. This is off of Literary Hub. There was an article published back in 2015 that kind of talked about. They took some of his quotes and stuff that he said and kind of compiled it into a list. I think there's like 16 things on this list, but we're going to see if we can apply this to ourselves as creatives, and maybe you can apply these too. So number one is give yourself time to mature as a writer, which I think is very important. And his quote is, "Well, I'm 34 now. If I don't make it by the time I'm 60, I'm just going to give myself 10 more years."
I do
Like,
I do like that. Don't rush. Don't feel like you're missing out, you know.
yeah, exactly. And the way I kind of take that is, give yourself time to mature. It's like you are going to suck in the beginning.
Mhm.
Like even if you're good in the beginning, maturing and using your craft and taking time to keep on writing and keep finding new ways, and don't just think you have it all at the beginning. As you mature in your writing, like, it's going to show and it's going to be good. Like, it's okay to allow yourself to grow.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way I see that. And I think we could take that, not necessarily yourself as a writer, but as a painter, as a
Oh
chef.
yeah.
Give yourself the time, the grace to mature. Maturity means you're learning, you're getting better the more that you do it.
Dude, it's literally like writing is in that vein. It's like golf. It's like something you can always work on. You can always get better. You can do it until you're
Yeah.
80. And it's like if you want to be a writer, and especially if you want to be like a published writer, the all you have to do is just keep writing. Just
Yeah.
keep doing it. Just keep putting those poems down. Just keep working on that story. Just keep stacking your experience, gaining as much wisdom as you can. Like, just keep putting stuff down, and eventually you're going to have something at some point. You're going to have a collection, or you're going to have a story, or you're going to have a voice. You're going to have an opinion. Eventually, you're going to refine it to where you can't help but not achieve the goal that you want, you know? And I think that's something that to me is like really hopeful about writing. It's not a rush. It's not like, oh, I'm missing out. I'm missing my opportunity. No, the more you keep doing it, the more you're going to like refine yourself for the right moment. And then you're going to be able to step in and actually do what you want to do with it.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm like, there's this freaking mosquito that keeps flying around my head. I'm trying to swipe it, not interrupt you
Oh,
while
you're
you're
good, man.
talking. I'm just like watching it fly around my head. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's good advice to carry on in pretty much everything that we do. And I think, like, I remember hearing, or not hearing, but reading somewhere that, like, his goal was to write something every day. Whether it was something small, big, whatever. His goal was to every day write something, no matter what.
Yeah. And it didn't matter. Like first thing he did, he woke up in the morning and sat down at that typewriter. And if he had a routine, I don't know. I haven't like researched his routine or anything, but didn't matter what he had done the night before, if he was hungover or whatever. Eventually, like, he was going to get up and he would be at that typewriter.
Yeah.
Um, I watched some interviews with him where they asked him, "Do you still write every day?" And by this time he's old, and he's kind of giving his philosophy on the world, and he was like, "Not every day. I usually usually it's 3 to 4 times a week." And I'm like, dude, even in your 70s, 80s, like that's pretty good. Like that's
Yeah,
really
exactly.
consistent.
And at that
So
point, it's like you've put the work in. You're
yeah,
okay to not have to do it every day at this point.
thousands of poems, man. Like
Yeah.
a poem a day is like that could seem overwhelming to people, but like think of like how many poems you have after 10 years. Think of how many poems you have
Yeah.
after 1 year. If you do a poem a day, like that's
You have a
books
book.
on
Yeah,
books
you
on
have.
books. Like
Yeah.
that's legit. So I like the mentality there. It's like every day, it doesn't matter. Like whatever you're feeling, sit down, capture it. If you have a memory of a moment, if you had an experience yesterday, sit down and write about it. You know, it doesn't matter what you're writing
Yeah.
as long as you're actively doing it.
Yeah. And I don't remember who said this, but early on when I was kind of like researching becoming a writer and like tips and stuff, gosh, I wish I remember who said this, but he was like, you're worried about having enough material to be a writer or how to fill this. He's like, write 1 page a day. Guess what? By the
Mm,
end of the year, you have a 365-page book that you can go publish right
yeah,
there. Or if you're having trouble becoming a poet, write 1 poem a day. You have 365 pages at the end of the year to publish, and there's your book.
yeah,
He's like,
for
one book a
sure.
year. Like, what are you worried about? Like, and when you break it down to like that, it's like, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. If I did just do 1 page a day, I
Totally.
would have a book at the end of the year. But most of us, we look at that, well, that's a year that I have to wait, but that's
No,
a
man.
year. Like, I don't want to wait a year. I want it now.
The year's
And
gonna
then
go
it
by
ends up
so
being, yeah,
fast.
and then it ends up like 5 years and you're still working on the same thing because you
Yeah,
refuse to just take it 1 page at a time, one
for
day
sure.
at a time, you know?
Yeah. Stephen King
Yeah.
said he tries when he's writing on a book, he tries to write 7 pages a day.
Yeah.
And 7 pages, that's his goal.
His limit.
And if that's all he does, that's fine. And for a novelist, 7 pages can go by pretty quick, because you're moving a story, you're trying to give detail, you're trying to fill dialogue, all these things. So as long as you are just making those 7 pages, or for him, as long as he's doing his 7 pages, he's good. And a lot of times he said a lot of times you'll get 7 pages and you're just getting started, and then before you know it you've got 20, 30, 40 pages. But
Yeah.
some days it's a struggle and you got 3 pages and you're like, okay, I just need four more, just
Yeah,
one
it's
more
true.
page, just one more page. And he's like, as long as you get seven, I'm good. He said, as long as I do my seven, I'm good, then I can be done for the day and I don't have to stress about it until tomorrow. And so
Yeah.
I think goals like that are like really simple. A poem a day, you're a novelist, 7 pages, 5 pages, whatever it is. But if you have that goal and you're at that keyboard, or have your pen in hand and that's your thing, like eventually you're going to get where you want to be, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, it's just building that routine, building that consistency. All right, let's look at step number 2, or not really a step, but what they have written as rule number 2 from Bukowski: let your creativity find whatever outlet it needs. And I think this is very important. Yeah, let your creativity find whatever outlet it needs. Just because you're a writer doesn't mean you have to be a writer at all times. You
Yeah,
could use your creativity to go write some music. You could use your creativity to go paint a picture. You could use your creativity to start taking photographs. Whatever outlet you need, like, you got to let that creativity out.
for sure. I used to feel like I had to have something to say every time I wrote. Like I always felt like if I'm going to write something, there needs to be meaning in it. There needs to be purpose in it. And that's not always the case. Sometimes you're just a lot of times you're just copying. You're documenting things you see, things you hear, things you feel,
Yeah.
and they just if you're in poetry, they just are what they are.
Yeah.
Um, and that was always like really I think that was really cool, was to realize, oh, I can literally just find a creative way to share something that I witnessed, or that that happened to me or happened to someone else, or a story someone told me. I can literally sit down and say, the other day I was talking with so and so and they said this, and it leads into something, and it's just it can be way simple. I think we make it way too complicated because we're trying to think of an end goal, And in reality, it's like just find the outlet, put something down, create something, let it
Yeah.
breathe. That's a really good. That's a
Yeah,
really good
for sure.
advice.
Yeah. So take that how you will, listener. Let your creativity find whatever outlet it needs. How could you apply that to your life? Rule number 3, treat the submissions of your work like it's a job. Now, there are times where the creative process is so much fun,
Yeah.
but there comes a point where you have to kind of treat it like a job if you're trying to be serious about publishing a book, if you're trying to be serious about making a movie, whatever it is. At some point you got to treat it like a job. Like he said here, I remember when I used to write and send whatever publication 15 or 20 or more stories a month, and later 3 or 4 or 5, and mostly at least one a week, from LA to Philly, wherever. And he was saying, like, yeah, I wrote it all, but now I have to treat it like a job. I got to send that stuff out. I can't just write my poems and let them sit there. No one's going to see them. No one's going to read them. So at some point, you have to treat it like a business. Start making connections. Start sending your work to publications if you want to get published in newsletters, monthly publications, or a book. Yeah, you kind of got to also treat it like a job in some cases.
You can create the art, but then you have to do the work to get it out there. I think another good thing to take away from that is, like, you can't just sit around and wait for inspiration. Like, you have to, like, sit down and just make yourself do it. And that's what he was so good at it every day. He was at that typewriter. Didn't matter. He's doing the work. And whatever came of that, he's written some things that are really profound. He's written some things that are pretty moving, some things that are pretty depraved. He's also written some real just bombs, like some crappy stuff. But it didn't matter. He's writing. And I think that's a really good takeaway. It's like, do the work. This is your job. Like, you can't just wait to be inspired, or you'll just be waiting forever. And it's, it's never going to happen. So.
Yeah, and I think in some cases, too, like, you also got to balance it, because you don't want to treat every single part of it like a job, because then you're going to lose the creative juices. You're going to lose the passion. If all you're looking for is that paycheck and that end point where it's like, no, I have to do this to make a living. Well, then you've lost the reason why you're doing it and creating the art. It's like, now it's just, if you're just doing it for a paycheck, which I understand, you got to pay the bills, sometimes, but you're going to lose that passion. You're going to hit that burnout, hit that wall, if you forget the fun and why you create art. Art's supposed to be fun and expressive and beautiful. But when you try to monetize every bit of it, that's when you can get stressful. You have to balance the creativity with the business side of it.
Yeah, some of the best artists are the ones who don't get paid.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they love it.
Or hire someone to do the business side of things for you.
Yeah,
and
there
you just
you go.
create.
Then they just focus on the art.
Yeah, exactly. All right, number 4, which is the most important one, I feel like. Sometimes you have to write a lot of bad stuff to get into the good stuff. Sometimes and in general, sometimes you have to make a lot of bad stuff to get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
Whether that's writing, art, construction, whatever it is that you're doing, like, you have to get through a lot of the bad stuff before you realize how you can get to the good stuff.
Just got to do the work.
That's where that writing every day, you're getting through all the bad stuff. Like when you're having conversations, like, all right, let's get all the bad ideas out of the way first. It's just like, all right, let's get all the bad writing out first.
It's like, just start spitballing, and whatever happens, let's find what we can in that and just go with it. It's true, man.
Yeah. And I think this is, definitely a good one that we should all be thinking about all the time in whatever venue area of creativity that we are in, is we have to write a lot of bad things. We have to produce a lot of bad things. And at the time, we think they're amazing.
Yeah.
We think, oh, this is the best thing I've written. This is the best production I've done. And then a month goes by and you're like, that's cringy. Why did I do that? Who let me put that out into the world? But hey, it's okay. You're learning. You're learning your style. You're learning from it. You're learning how to weave in and out of that, and that's where the good stuff comes from.
Dude, seriously, I think it's really important not to release stuff right away. Because like, how many things when you were like 20, Corey, your view of the world was probably so different.
Oh, 100%.
Like same for me, so different. Like I would have written things back then that I would be appalled to read now. Just like style, but also like viewpoints and just all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, give yourself some grace, and also like let your stuff breathe for a little bit. Write something and
Yeah.
let it sit for a while. Come back to it before you just put it out there, because oh my gosh, there's this one. I used to have a blog back in the day, and I wrote this one piece, and it was a blog on spiritualism and stuff like that. And there was a piece talking about I don't want to say too much about it, but it was it's talking about like Christian like dating, and like roles for men and women, and things like stuff I knew nothing about. I knew absolutely nothing about. And I had someone that I was under at the time, like learning from and writing and stuff, and I sent it to her, and I was like, "Oh, what do you think?" And she was very gracious and kind, and was like, "Oh, I think this is not really the right direction for you as a writer." I think about that because I go back and look at it. And I'm like, that is so cringe. I cannot believe I wrote that, and then I sent it to, a well-known female author. Like I can't.
Yeah.
It's so bad. And so sometimes you need that time. Like write something. If you have an idea or a thought or an opinion, write it down, and then don't do anything with it for a while. Come back to it and see if it still matches what you believe, or if it's even right.
Very true.
Gosh.
Very true. Do you have one you want to pull off this list?
Let's see. A lot of it's really, really good. I like this one, number 7.
Number 7, okay.
Don't overwork your writing. Often the first is best.
Yes.
That's really true in poetry, especially because sometimes you're just conveying emotion, and sometimes the best thing you can do is just vomit it and get it out. And
because that's when the emotion is real.
When it's fresh, when it's real, it's right there. And it's funny. This is like paradox, or this is like opposite of what we were just talking about. Is like let it sit for a while. Like conveying the work itself. Sometimes getting it on paper is like the best thing, and then sometimes you can't overwork it. You can take something and work it into something else that it's not. And I really like this one because if you write it out and let it sit for a while and come back to it and you still feel the same, like that's a good place to be. That's a good piece.
Yeah.
For sure.
No, absolutely. I always had that issue a lot, was don't rely on your first draft. Don't rely on your first stuff, because that's just getting the idea out. You have to rework it. So that was my philosophy a lot when I first started writing. And I mean, I'm glad I don't do that anymore, because there is stuff I've just written. I'm like, I'm not changing a thing about that. That came out perfect. Yeah, because like you're saying, that's when the emotion is real at that point.
Yeah, and it's like that's exactly what I wanted to say in the moment. I'm not changing it. Like sometimes that's really valid, for sure.
And then whenever you're going back to rework something, a lot of times you're not seeing it through the same eyes of the emotion that you felt when you wrote it, and so now you're trying to take it in a different direction when you're coming back to it to overwork it. It's like, well, now you don't have that same vision you had, and now you're changing it, and so it's losing its longevity there.
Yeah, you're thinking too much at that point.
Yeah. Sweet. All right, I'm going to go with number 8 here, because I think this is important for all of us to understand, is work all the jobs. Meaning, don't quit your job to become the next American novelist, the next New York Times bestseller, until you've become that. You've got to pay your bills. I've worked so many jobs that I've hated so I could buy the equipment that I want to do, for the project I'm working on. And And there was times where like, oh, I can just quit. I'm good. I can. It's like, well, no. I mean,
Still gotta eat.
you still got to eat. I still got bills to pay. You know, and if you're not, I mean, a lot of times if you get writing projects and stuff, yeah, great. You made a lot of money on that one project, but when's your next project coming along? You know, it could be a year before your next project comes along that you make a good paycheck from.
Yeah.
You know, so it's okay. I think, yeah, and I think a lot of culture, or especially for, I'm gonna say like, well, I think millennials are probably the biggest, is the side hustle culture, you know?
Yeah.
And so we feel like you always have to have some kind of hustle going on. But at the same time, like, it's okay that you aren't going to make a living from what you want to do right away. Like, you need to support yourself. And I think we need to understand that you have to support yourself first, and understand that and say, okay, that's something I understand I have to do. I have to work at Taco Bell for a little while so I can afford to spend a few hours at night writing, so I can afford to rent that studio to go paint in, you know. And then when you start selling and you start doing good with your art side of business, then you can maybe lower your hours. Don't quit. Lower your hours. You know, you have to keep that balance. Like, there's been so many times I want to just quit all my jobs that I work and side projects so I can just go focus on one thing, you know. But we're creatives. There's not a lot of money in it unless you're working for huge studios.
Yeah. Sometimes it's also really good to just acquire as many skills as you can. Like taking different jobs, doing odd jobs, like stepping into careers you never would have expected, you know. Sometimes that's a valuable thing, is to be able to acquire as many skills as you can in different fields so that you can actually be more well-rounded and go out and do other things and apply that to your art later on.
Yeah. And like I said, I think this is something people who create in any form that need to understand that we have your back. It is okay, and it is not failure that you are working a 9-to-5 job so you can support your craft. It is 100% okay. We have your back. We support you in that, you know, because you have to eat. You have to pay your bills. Like, don't let anyone get down on you because you're working a 9-to-5 job that you hate, so you can do the thing that you love. Now, if you absolutely, like we've talked about before, if you absolutely hate it, get out of there, find a different job.
Yeah.
You know, but it's okay to support.
Seriously, don't stay in a place that's toxic or bad for you. Like, don't put yourself in a depraved situation and stay there. You don't have to do that. But
don't kill the creativity.
if you can be there and like at least enjoy the time, or at least enjoy the people you're with, or at least somewhat enjoy the work, that's probably an okay place to be. That doesn't define you. That's not who you are. Like, just hang in there.
And I think we'll go ahead and jump to this last. I mean, there's a lot more. So if you are interested in the full thing, just go look on Literary Hub for Charles Bukowski's Rules for Writing. And we're going to jump to the last one here, because I think the last one is brilliant and something that I think is good that we can all take from this. Is rule number 16 here. Rejection is good for the soul. Yes. Rejection, no matter how bad it sucks, it is good.
Yeah.
It keeps you leveled, and it shows you things you need to work on. You could think you're the best writer in the world, and then you keep getting rejected. There's probably a reason you're getting rejected.
Yeah.
Learn from it. Learn what that rejection means, and then just get better at it, you know? I mean, just let that be your motivation to get better.
Seriously. Also learn who you really are when you get rejected. Like, that rejection is going to bring out things in you that maybe you didn't know were there. And that's a really good opportunity to look inward and reflect on, why am I feeling this way? Like, this rejection doesn't define me as a person. It's a lot of times rejection is just like, hey, this is not, like, you're a great writer, this is just not what we're into right now. So, you know, it will really show you who you are as a person, and that's a great opportunity to really reflect, and maybe it'll give you some more fuel too, some more inspiration
Exactly.
to write about.
Yeah, I think Bukowski even mentions that. He's like, that rejection can, fuel your inspiration. He says like, hell, you might even find a poem or two to write about through rejection.
Yeah,
You know?
I like. He says rejection is good for the soul. My soul is now a mule.
Yes.
I am very strong. I carry anything you put on me, and it's just so good. I love it.
Yeah, dude, like I have gone through so much rejection, like especially when I first started designing board games.
Oh man,
Like I pitched one specific board game to like 25, 30 publishers, and just rejection. But a lot of that was just like, it's just not our style. It doesn't fit our brand. And so a lot of it was like, and then you have to look at that like, well, is it me? Is it my game? It's like, oh, well, actually, it just didn't fit this. It didn't fit this. And then I got, finally got that acceptance from a Canadian publisher to publish my game. And it did great over there. And it did great in a lot of countries. It sold in like over 20 countries, and so it did great.
That's awesome.
Is it a bestseller? No. But it did good, and it was great. And it was my first segue into that, and so now my name's out there a little bit. I got 2 more contracts from that, because I learned from what all those rejections were, was like, oh, I need to focus more on the brands that would fit this style of game, and don't just blindly throw it out to everybody and hope someone picks it up. And that's what I did with my next games. Was like, okay, this publisher does these specific types of board games. They look for this style. Oh my gosh, I have a game that fits all that. Guess what? They were the second publisher I pitched to. I got picked up from that publisher. It's because you learn from that rejection.
Heck yeah.
And it's like, okay, what can I do different from that?
That's awesome, man. Yeah, a lot of the in the writing world, a lot of the publishers you query, they will tell you right up front, like, you're a good writer. Keep going. This just doesn't fit our style. A lot of them will even tell you, we're just not even accepting applications right now. We're not accepting like queries, and so it a lot of times it has nothing to do with you as a creative. It's just dependent on what's popular, what that person's looking for, or the direction they're trying to go. So that doesn't define you as an artist in any means. I think it's really important to remember that, like, you're going to get rejected, like it's going to happen, and that's where you really see how strong you are. Can you keep going in the face of rejection? Eventually, though, if you keep going, eventually you're going to get there. You're going to get picked up.
Yeah, you're going to break through that wall eventually.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, everyone. So these are some of the rules of writing from Charles Bukowski, who we, talked about and did our poems in the style of. Now, hopefully you could take some good from this. Now, some of the bad that we left out is he loved to get plastered every night, and also wrote a lot of poetry, very, very drunk.
Yeah.
Had an alcoholic problem. We'll leave that up to you. We're not going to say yes or no to that. That's a method for you to figure out on your own. But we're going to talk about these steps. So hopefully these are things you can apply to yourself as a creative, whatever your style of creativity might be. They work for us a lot specifically. And a lot of times just talking about creativity is a great way to get inspired and to do work. So find those people you can surround yourself with, have these conversations with, and inspire each other. I think that's a huge thing.
Absolutely. I agree. I love that we are able to take so much away from Bukowski and not even touch on, like you said, the drinking and the prostitutes and all the low life stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it, but we're gonna hit the.
That's awesome, man.
We're gonna stay in the greener pastures.
Yeah, we'll focus on the good stuff. So another fun fact. Just random. He did his, was it a column or was it a book? I don't remember. He wrote Notes of a Dirty Old Man. Mm-hmm. And the FBI decided to start keeping a file on him after he wrote that. So I think that's pretty cool. Like, just keep writing. Eventually you'll get picked up, or eventually you'll have your own FBI file. So
you'll be on the watch list.
Either way, you made it.
That's true. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out and listening to us, Two
Yes.
Poets. Don't forget to like us on all the platforms. Leave us a review. We love your reviews. We want more people to know about us, so your reviews help us with that. So head over to Apple, leave a review, or give us that thumbs up on Spotify, and check out the YouTube. All that wonderful stuff. You can find it at Two Poets Podcast. And as always, I'm Corey,
I'm Ben.
and we'll see you next time.
Peace.